As I grew older, life inevitably changed. My days became quieter, filled with small joys that I had come to appreciate: morning tea, the scent of fresh flowers from my garden, and the comforting warmth of a hot shower. It was during one of these calm, simple moments that everything shifted. It was a warm afternoon, with the sun beginning to set, casting a soft golden hue through the curtains. The house was silent. I decided to take a long, soothing shower. As I stepped into the bathroom, the familiar warmth of the water flowed over me, washing away the fatigue of the day, a sensation I had grown to cherish. Steam rose around me, enveloping me in a cocoon of heat and relaxation, and my mind began to drift, as it often did in these quiet moments. My thoughts wandered to memories of youth and passion, never expecting my peaceful reverie to be suddenly interrupted. I heard the door creak open. At first I thought I was imagining it, but when I turned my head slightly, I realized it wasn't just slightly ajar. The door was wide open. There, standing in the doorway, were my cousin and her friend. I hadn't heard them arrive, and I had no idea they were visiting. My heart raced in a way it hadn't in years. There was an unspoken closeness in their gaze, something I hadn't anticipated. My cousin smiled softly, her friend standing silently beside her, their eyes fixed on me. Oddly, I didn't feel embarrassed, standing there exposed in the shower. The warm water continued to cascade over me as the room filled with a misty haze. Their presence wrapped around me, a mix of curiosity and something deeper, something I hadn't felt in years. I stood still, the sound of the water blending with the soft rustle of their movements. My cousin moved closer, her hand lightly grazing the edge of the shower door. "We didn't mean to surprise you like this," she whispered, her voice soft through the steam. Her friend, silent but present, took a step forward, her dark eyes holding something unspoken. Time seemed to slow down in the quiet moment that hung between us. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from something else, an awakening of emotions I had long since pushed aside. They inched closer until they were right by the shower, so close they could feel the warmth of the water on their skin. Though still dressed, I could sense the tension in the air, the way their eyes followed my every move. But then, without a word, my cousin reached out and gently opened the shower door. The cool air hit my skin, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I met her gaze, holding it, feeling the spark of the moment course through me. She smiled again, that same soft, knowing smile, and her friend mirrored the expression. Their closeness surrounded me, and my cousin whispered in a low, intimate voice that made my breath catch. "I think we should join you." I felt her hand on my arm, her fingers brushing against my skin, sending a shiver down my spine. Her friend, standing behind her, stepped forward as well, both of them now entering the shower, fully clothed but unconcerned. The water soaked through their clothes, clinging to their bodies as they moved closer, eliminating the space between us. I was enveloped by the warmth of the water and the heat of their bodies. My cousin's fingers traced down my arm, her touch light but intentional. Her friend stood close, a steady, silent presence. The water trickled down my skin, mixing with the wet fabric of their clothes, creating a sensation that was both overwhelming and intoxicating. Trapped between them, I felt a deep connection, a mutual understanding of the longing I had kept hidden for so long. As the water continued to fall, my cousin leaned in, her lips brushing my ear as she whispered, "You don't have to be alone anymore." The words hung in the air, tender and inviting. I felt her hand slide down my back in a slow, deliberate motion that made my skin tingle. Her friend, still silent but watchful, drew even closer, her warm breath grazing my neck. There was an undeniable sense of rightness in the moment, as though everything had been leading to this point. I had long believed that those moments of passion and closeness were behind me, but in this unexpected situation, I realized that desire doesn't simply fade with time. It waits, ready to reawaken and remind you what it's like to feel truly alive. The three of us stood there, water flowing over us, our bodies pressed together. My cousin's hands roamed my skin, her touch gentle yet persistent, as if she had been anticipating this moment as much as I had. Her friend, though silent, was undeniably present, her fingers trailing down my arm, echoing my cousin's movements. It was as though they moved in perfect sync, their touches coordinated in flawless unison. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the moment, feeling the warmth of their bodies and the steady rhythm of the water. There was no haste, no rush, just a slow, deliberate unfolding of something that had been simmering for years. It was a feeling of being desired, of being truly seen in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. Their touch went beyond the physical. It connected me to something deeper, something I had forgotten. My cousin leaned in again, her lips brushing my cheek in a lingering, soft kiss that sent heat coursing through me. Her friend moved closer as well, her hands sliding down my sides, her breath warm against my skin. I felt myself give in, releasing the years of solitude and the belief that this chapter of my life had ended. For what seemed like hours, we stood there, the water pouring over us, their hands exploring me, every touch filled with tenderness and a passion I hadn't felt in years. Each movement was slow and deliberate, every moment savored. Each touch reminded me that I was still capable of feeling, of wanting, of being desired. The world outside faded away, leaving only the three of us in that intimate space. I didn't know where this moment would take us, and I didn't care. All I knew was that, in this moment, I was no longer alone. The warmth of the water, the heat of their bodies, and the closeness of their touch, it was everything I hadn't realized I needed. As the water continued to fall, I let myself be swept away, surrendering to the moment, the passion, and the unexpected intimacy that had found me. My cousin gently cupped my face, her thumb tracing my cheek, making my skin tingle. Her eyes met mine, soft yet intense, filled with something I hadn't seen in anyone's eyes for years. She leaned in, her breath warm against my lips, and before I could even comprehend what was happening, her mouth was on mine, soft, searching, but full of need. I closed my eyes, losing myself in the kiss, feeling every emotion I had buried for so long rise to the surface. Her lips were tender yet firm, drawing out a response from me that I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. As we kissed, I felt her friend's hands circle my waist, pulling me closer, her presence just as intoxicating. Her fingers traced delicate patterns along my wet skin, sending shivers of anticipation through me. I broke the kiss with my cousin, gasping for air, and in that brief pause, her friend's lips found my neck, pressing soft, heated kisses along my sensitive skin. I let out a soft sigh, my body instinctively leaning toward her, craving more. The three of us were intertwined now, our bodies moving in sync, the shower water mingling with the heat of the moment. My cousin's lips found mine again, this time more urgent, as her hands slid down my back, exploring me with a familiarity that felt both new and long-awaited. Her friend's lips traveled lower, leaving a trail of kisses down my chest, sending waves of pleasure that made it hard to stand. My hands reached out, tangling in their wet hair, pulling them closer, needing everything they offered. I had never imagined feeling this way again, desired, wanted, as if every inch of me was being adored. My cousin's lips remained on mine, and her hands, delicate yet sure, moved across my body, knowing exactly where to touch to make my breath hitch. Her friend, still silent but ever present, continued her slow exploration, her hands and mouth working together to ignite feelings I hadn't experienced in decades. Each touch, each kiss, each moment felt like it unfolded in slow motion, the passion growing with every second. Now, my cousin's friend was at my side, her lips brushing my ear as she whispered, "You're beautiful." The words sent a shiver through me, her voice low and full of desire. Her hands moved with purpose, finding the contours of my body and pulling me even closer, as though she couldn't stand to be apart from me for even a moment. My cousin's lips left mine, and she smiled softly, a smile that told me she had waited for this moment as long as I had. Her fingers gently pushed wet strands of hair from my face before her lips trailed down my neck. Gentle kisses ignited a trail of heat along my skin. Her friend joined in, their hands and mouths working in flawless unison, each caress seamlessly blending into the next, until I could no longer distinguish one from the other. I softly moaned, the sound lost in the rhythmic cascade of the falling water. My body was alive, every nerve tingling as their hands wandered, exploring every part of me. I could feel their yearning in the careful yet intense way they moved, as if this moment held as much significance for them as it did for me. My cousin's hand drifted lower, her touch gentle yet insistent, and I gasped in response. Her friend mirrored her motions, their fingers moving together as they continued to explore me. The heat between us became almost unbearable, the tension rising with every soft touch, every lingering kiss. Water flowed over us, steam swirling around our entwined bodies, yet all I could feel was the heat of their touch, the way they made me come alive in ways I hadn't imagined possible. I kissed them both, first my cousin, her lips familiar and tender, then her friend, whose kiss held a surprising fire. We moved as if we had been doing this for years, our bodies fitting together effortlessly, each touch sending waves of pleasure through me, leaving me breathless. There was no urgency, no rush, just a slow, deliberate unfolding of desire that felt infinite. Every moment was savored, every kiss and touch a reminder of the long-dormant passion within me. My hands roamed their bodies, feeling the wet fabric of their clothes clinging to their skin, the heat radiating from them as they pressed against me, leaving no space between us. I could feel the tension building inside me, a slow, steady rise of pleasure that threatened to consume me. My cousin's fingers danced over my skin, teasing, coaxing more out of me with each passing second. Her friend's hands gripped my hips, her mouth finding the sensitive spots along my collarbone that made me gasp. The sensations were overwhelming, but I didn't want them to stop. I wanted more, needed more. The water faded into the background as the intensity of the moment took over. My cousin's lips found mine again, her kiss deep and consuming, while her hands continued their slow, deliberate exploration. I felt her friend's mouth on my skin, her kisses trailing lower, her hands guiding me closer until all I could feel was them every kiss, every touch, every moment filled with a passion that left me trembling. Then, as if in perfect synchronization, the tension that had been building reached its peak. I let out a soft cry, my body trembling with release, and they held me close, their arms wrapped around me as waves of pleasure washed over me. In that moment, the world outside the shower disappeared, leaving just the three of us, lost in the intimacy that had drawn us together. We stood there for what seemed like an eternity, the water still cascading around us, our breaths mingling as we held each other close. My heart raced, not from fear or hesitation, but from the sheer intensity of the moment, the realization that I had found something I hadn't even known I was searching for. Finally, my cousin smiled at me, her eyes soft but intense, her voice whispering. "You're not alone anymore," her friend nodded in agreement, her hand resting on my waist, silently promising more to come. In that moment I knew they were right. I wasn't alone anymore. I had found something unexpected, something beautiful, something that made me feel truly alive. She gazed up at me with knowing eyes, her lips curving into a gentle smile. I couldn't resist her, didn't want to, and leaned in for another kiss, slower this time, softer, allowing the warmth of the moment to wash over us. Her lips parted beneath mine, and I felt the steady beat of her heart, still in sync with my own, as her fingers slid up my chest, brushing my skin and pulling me closer. I kissed her deeply, savoring the softness of her lips and the way her body melted against mine. The barn around us felt like our own world, the silence broken only by the gentle sounds of our breathing, blending with the rhythm of our kisses. My lips trailed from her mouth to her neck, kissing her there and feeling the way she shivered beneath my touch. Her hands tightened on my shoulders, her body arching slightly as I kissed the sensitive spot, just below her ear, drawing a soft gasp from her lips. We were completely lost in each other, the outside world forgotten as my hands moved over her body, memorizing every curve. She responded to every touch, her fingers digging gently into my back, urging me on. Her breath quickened as our lips met once more in a slow, lingering kiss. Her hands cradled my face, kissing me deep and tender, our lips moving together as if we were the only two people in the world. I kissed her back with all I had, pouring every emotion and passion into each kiss, every brush of her lips sending sparks through me, and I felt her responding with the same intensity. We shifted, her body pressing closer to mine as I pulled her into my lap, our lips never parting. The way she kissed me, slow and deliberate, as if wanting to make this moment last forever, made my heart race. Her fingers tangled in my hair as she kissed me again, her lips soft and warm, her breath mingling with mine as we stayed wrapped in each other. She kissed me with such tenderness it made my heart ache, and I kissed her back just as softly, my hands gently tracing the curve of her back, savoring the feel of her skin under my fingertips. The barn felt timeless, as though this moment would never end, and neither of us wanted it to. Our kisses slowed, becoming softer, more intimate, as we held each other in the fading light. She rested her forehead against mine, eyes closed, and I pressed one final kiss to her lips, a promise of everything that had just happened and everything still to come. "Whatever happens," I whispered, my lips brushing hers, "we'll face it together." She smiled against my mouth, her breath warm and steady, her lips finding mine again in a final, soft kiss. "Together," she whispered back, her voice filled with certainty. And as we sat there, still entwined, kissing softly, the world outside seemed distant, and all that mattered was the bond we had created.